Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Welcome to another episode of Masters of Business. We're going to be talking about modern SEO, we're going to be talking about authority content, and we're going to be talking about what it takes to rank well on the search engines in the current environment. My name is David Jenyns, and I'm actually the director of a company called Melbourne SEO Services. We also have a sister company called Melbourne Video Production. And what we do is we help small and medium-sized businesses market themselves through sort of innovative strategies to try and get better visibility online. So I'm going to try and take a lot of what we've learnt and sort of bottle it down, give you the 80-20. I've tried to apply the 80-20 principle to this particular presentation because there's just a lot to cover when thinking about search engine optimization. A lot has changed and it continues to change. So it's important that we have a strategy that really sets us up for the long term, something that doesn't really capitalize on little loopholes or opportunities that we see with Google and little ranking loopholes, and we try and have something that really stands the test of time. When people think about SEO, a lot of times, if we go back just a few years, they think in terms of SEO as almost like the holy grail of marketing. And it really was. You could give an SEO $1 and then very quickly they would turn it into $5. And I think part of that was just understanding the way that Google worked, and their algorithm was quite simple. So what we could do is deconstruct that and then reverse engineer and then make sure that our website ticked all of the boxes for what Google was looking for, and then it would rank. But times have started to change, and SEO has also started to evolve now. And what it is that they're looking for has really just started to change, and we need to make sure that we update and modernize our approach. So some of the changes that we've seen with Google's algorithm, we've seen obviously some more well-known updates like the Penguin update, the Panda update, the Hummingbird update, and there have been actually a whole range of other updates that Google has had through to their algorithm. And those algorithm changes, what they were trying to do is weed out people who had spotted those loopholes that I was talking about, and they just sort of started to remove people who'd figured out how to manipulate the rankings and how to game the system. Because if you think about it, Google's primary objective, what they're looking to do is make sure that they deliver the best results that they can for someone when they're searching on Google. So the better the results are, the search engine results page, and the better experience that someone has when they come to Google, the higher the chance that they're actually going to come back and continue to use Google over and over and over. So it's, for them, a primary concern to make sure they have a fantastic user experience. Now, they used these updates as a way to squash people who had found those little loopholes. And the updates that we're seeing now, the speed in which they're happening is starting to increase as well. A lot of these updates now have been rolled into Google's algorithm. So now it's just a constant update where where Google is now identifying these sort of little loopholes. So it's important with that in mind what we're starting to do now is make sure that the strategy that you've got is more long-term and make sure that it's in line with Google's objectives rather than just looking for a way to get a quick ranking. So if we go back to 2004, I think it's important to have a little bit of a think about how it's changed, make sure that we're all on the same page, particularly if you have had some experience with SEO in the past. If you can understand with where it's come from and now what Google's actually looking for, it'll make it much easier for you to develop your strategy. So if we go back again, 2004, Google's algorithm, it really was all about identifying which keywords someone was actually searching and then making sure that those keywords appeared on your website. And Once you've got the keywords placed in things like the title tag, the meta description, a couple of times on the page, then what you'd want to do is make sure that Google could crawl your website and find those different pages. And then we'd create content and syndicate it around the web, share it around to try and generate some backlinks. And then ultimately that is what would give us a ranking. Now, it's a pretty simplistic sort of strategy on what you would need to do to try and get rankings. But now if we compare that to what we call modern SEO, Google's taking into account just so many more factors now. Potentially one of the biggest things that Google's really looking at is making sure that they've got an excellent user experience. They want to make sure that when someone's using Google and they land on a particular website, that they really enjoy that website. It helps to answer their problems as quickly as possible, and they don't hit the back button, head back to Google, and then click on that number 2 listing. So Google's monitoring that, and they're looking at things like, well, how quickly is the website loading? How does it look on a mobile device? What type of content have you got on the site, and how is that content getting shared and engaged in? All of these signals now kind of get rolled into this much larger algorithm that Google's looking for. So what you need to do is stop thinking about Google and ranking in Google and SEO in terms of, well, what are the keywords and how can I push them into the right place on the page and just generate a few backlinks, and take a much broader picture, taking into account a lot of these different factors that Google's looking for. We don't know the exact algorithm, but what we can do is see which websites are ranking and also have a look at some of the communication that Google's putting out there and use that as a way to try and inform our strategy. And Google is getting a lot better with the way that they're communicating and getting that word out there. Whether it's through their Google Search Console, which used to be known as Google Webmaster Tools, that's a way for Google now to be able to communicate with you and let you know what it is that they like about your website, what they don't like about your website, whether or not you've got any linking issues or whether or not there are any indexing issues. They'll communicate through to you via this Search Console. But there are other ways that Google will communicate with you as well. They're putting out a lot more content than they ever used to. For example, there's the Google Quality Raters Guidelines. That's one of the things you can see on the left there. And you can do a search on Google to find that. It's a free document that shows you what Google's looking for when trying to determine a good quality website from a bad quality website. And then there's also things like Google Webmaster Guidelines. There's a whole bunch of different ways that Google is able to communicate with us and let us know what it is that they're looking for. So what I do as an SEO, I try and distill all of that information down as best as I can, and then I'm going to succinctly put it into a strategy that you can employ on your website. So this kind of circles back round to what is modern SEO. I often get a lot of clients when we chat, they'll want to know, okay, well, what's the process that you go through for ranking a particular website? And we've broken it into this 3-stage process. Sometimes I find when something looks simple or disarmingly simple, oftentimes they're the things that have had the most thought go into them. And this is one of those processes that took us quite some time to develop this framework, because it was about thinking not so much what goes in it, but also what it is that we leave out. But the 3-step process for modern SEO is: step 1, making sure that you have a fantastic website that's quick loading, that has a great user experience, that looks great on mobile, and just follows Google's best practice. Then step 2 is about making sure that you have great quality content, because these days you don't really have an SEO strategy unless you have a content strategy. And then you also need to think in terms of how do we take that content and share it around the web, and that's the 3rd and final stage. So we'll just break this up into a few different stages and kind of help you to understand each part and think in terms of how would you apply this to your website. That's always the question you'd want to be asking as you're watching this. If you've got a website, are you ticking each one of these boxes? And if not, just make note of it so that you can make sure that you get that checked off. So for the website, I want to break it into these 3 steps. We've got technical, making sure that the website's technically sound. We're going to have a look at on-page SEO. We'll have a look at off-page SEO. Those two steps, the on-page and off-page, might be something that you're familiar with if you've heard a little bit about SEO in the past. But there are a few things that Google has sort of changed in the way that they're looking at those components. So that first one about getting your website right, the way that you want to do that is think in terms of when was the last time my website was updated. If your website hasn't been updated in the past 2 or 3 years, chances are it's time to update. It's an example there of possibly the world's worst looking website. It's not very much.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.